Hi guys, I'm Becca Otis from Five Lines Pottery, and I'm located in Van.
And I'm Ryan Durbin from RD Ceramics, located in Highland Heights, Kentucky.
And welcome to Wheel Talk.
It looks ridiculous. It looks so ridiculous.
That's good. I like that.
I got this new hairdo.
No, you didn't.
Okay, hold on. It just
That's
like
really
crazy.
on there too. Wow.
I was just trying to do that for the shock effect.
Oh, you got me. Pretty
Yeah. Yeah.
How y'all doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Nice to finally meet you both. And yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me here too and stuff.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Ooh, who made the mug you got there?
This one is from a guy named Andy Balmer. He's this old school salt fire guy here in Portland. I worked at a factory called Pratt & Larson. It's like a towel manufacturer. And he was kind of the old school guy that was running it for a while. And so he gave one to me. And then when I went to go visit him at a studio sale, he did a little bit ago. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Have you ever salt fired or anything, or did he?
I haven't done any salt. I tried to get in with him, but he was a little. I think he only fires like once a year now. He's kind of on that. He's kind of like doing his own thing in the background. I think a little bit. I've done some wood stuff in the past over at East Creek. If you've kind of heard of that at all over here in Portland, it's like a big onagama they have over there. But mostly cone 6 electric. Keeping it real.
Nice.
The easiest, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely the easiest.
Yeah. You've been, from what I've heard, you've been looking more into salt firing, cone 6 salt stuff. Is that?
Yeah,
that
soda.
Correct?
Yeah.
Soda. Yeah.
Soda. Yeah. So I'm getting some dates together for when I'm gonna actually build the soda kiln at the house. So we're gonna build it out back. It's not really like it's converting an electric kiln. So it's basically what I did at Isaac Shoes this summer.
Yeah.
In Kansas. So we're basically going to replicate that here. Yeah. Isaac's been having some really cool results with the ones he's been getting out.
Yeah.
So looking forward to that. It's going to be a big undertaking, but it'll be awesome once I get it going.
You just basically gut the thing, set up some gas, and then kind of just throw in some.
I mean, you don't really have to take anything out of it. You just
the elements don't cause any ruckus or anything.
No, you're gonna you line it with a castable material that's rated to fire up to 3,000 degrees. So you're basically covering all of the elements and the soft brick, or else it would like degrade and eat away. So the elements actually give it some teeth to grab into when you're putting that material in there. You kind of mix it up like concrete, and then you like spread it in there.
Okay. I see. Oh, well, you got me thinking now,
Yeah. So it makes it way more attainable and like doable, because you really just need the shell.
Yeah. You need something.
And then the brick can be in whatever condition. Like it could be a really shitty brick situation and it can still work. But
it's gonna get pretty blasted, I bet.
Yeah. And then the lid, you can't really like coat the lid, so you got to kind of do the best you can to like protect the pots. So I think Isaac's putting like a shelf on the top shelf so that there's something where the little flakes can fall onto the shelf instead of onto the pots.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
But yeah, there is a burner, and you do have to cut like a little area out of one of the bands for where the burner is going to be like a port. Or that's not really where the burner goes. The burner goes kind of like underneath because you're going to have a stack of bricks, but that's more the port so you can like put the soda in with an angle iron.
That's cool. I'm excited to see your work come out. That'll be fun to see that change up from the electric stuff you've been doing. So
it's so different. So
it's a whole new world, right?
The variety.
I think that when he like gets into that part, he's gonna be a lot more My earphones aren't on.
You
Can you
What?
hear us?
Great. That's all good. Are those the new ones? Are those the new Bose?
No, I can hear you.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
really
they're the brand new
confused
ones.
right now.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. I think that when you get into it, you're going to get a lot more like creative and loose with your throwing, and I think it'll produce like a lot of nice results.
Yeah, because the subtle textures will really accentuate in the different surfaces, and
Yeah.
like I don't plan to put any of the like carved stuff in there because I feel like it's just going to be blown out. But it kind of gets me back to throwing those simple forms and seeing how they turn out in that atmosphere. So
Oh yeah, I'm curious because you kind of got your stuff pretty dialed in with all the underglaze and the carving and the sgraffito you got going on, so it'll be a whole new. Yeah. I'm
yeah,
curious.
I don't really, and I don't know if it's hard to see from social, but I mean you probably see from shows that the carving stuff is only 15% of the work that I make, or 10%.
Yeah.
So it's not really the bread and butter, but the stuff that I show that's more eye-catching for social media is that kind of work. Probably
Yeah.
just
It's
because I'm
yeah.
more proud of it, so it's easier to show that because I feel like it's more enticing than sharing just simple stuff.
Yeah.
But
You got solid glazes going on too and everything as well. So I always appreciate. I mean, I think the first time that I remember seeing you and your work was like the spoon rests and all the glazes that you were using, all the spoon rests. It's like good. I don't want to say simple because, but it takes a long time kind of figuring it out. But like nice, straightforward glazes done well
Mhm.
is something you don't get to see as often as sometimes you wish. So
yeah,
especially
For
on a
sure.
clean form and things like that. So
Ryan is the spoon rest man.
it'll be nice when I get to the end of the year and like do the analytics of how many spoon rests I made and sold or whatever.
yeah.
See how that turns out. But yeah, I like making them, so I still cranking through them.
That's good.
Those and the shot glasses, I like throwing tons of those too. So
Yeah, I remember seeing those kind of right when I first found y'all. I think like a year ago, maybe a little more, is when I first started kind of listening to y'all. And I'm pretty sure I binged probably most of them while I was working at that factory job doing tile stuff and getting an insight into how it all
That'll
goes for
get
everything.
ya.
So yeah, it helps
I
out.
used to have a friend who used to do detailing, and he would listen to a book a day. Like,
oh my gosh.
yeah, just like always doing detailing, and yeah, just like always listening to something. That's how it was when I was working production too. It's just like
Mhm.
I didn't listen to podcasts because if you listen to podcasts and you're thinking about things other than what you're doing, so like I needed to listen to something else. But yeah, for sure.
You said you kind of need to zone in, not zone out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is contrary to what most people think.
Yeah, it was nice to zone out. Yeah, I was just making glaze all day and fixing stuff and doing all that. So it was nice to and
Yeah,
also just be thinking about pottery, and kind of it's I've been kind of a constant through the journey, which has been kind of nice. So it's always good. Yeah, it's nice. Like even across the country, you can still see people doing their thing and growing. Like I remember I started listening, I think before you even got your van and stuff like that, and then
oh yeah,
seeing that journey's been pretty cool and everything too. So yeah,
it's been
yeah,
fun.
yeah.
Uh
It's wild. It's gotta be wild, of course, but
oh, I don't think it's too wild. I mean,
Last year was probably more wild getting acclimated than this year, I would suspect. But
I suppose, yeah. I think that I feel like I only did one big like trip last year, and well, maybe two, but I've always done long trips and just slept in my car. And like that's literally why I bought my car. I was like, "Oh, can I sleep in the back? Great." And then cuz I always go to the West Coast like without any, always have to go to the West Coast cuz I have family there, I have friends there, all the things.
it's
And
the best place.
yeah. And apart from the money, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not wrong here.
but yeah, like I went to Michigan and that was like a big endeavor. But other than that, I just, just worked in my studio and then slept in the van. It's like, it's just like it's mobile, but it's still
Yeah.
just in one space. So it's
It's
nice.
your lifestyle too. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can bounce around, go see people. I feel like I always see like you popping up in a new place or something like that and doing
Yeah.
things. So
Yeah, I do like popping to see people. It's nice to be able to like go to Ryan's house and I can sleep in my own bed and I can, like still I like I've worked in my van while I was at Ryan's house instead of working in his studio and stuff like that. So that's always nice.
Very flexible, and
Yeah.
Lloyd can do his own thing, and you don't have to worry about him like, oh, how's he gonna be in this area? It's like he'll figure it out.
Dude.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm at Deidre's house right now, which is Ryan's mom, and I went in a different way today because I came from Cincinnati and I normally come from Indianapolis, so it's just a different direction. So I approached their their neighborhood differently, and when we got to the point where he knew which house we were at, that motherfucker was meowing the shit out of things. Like he could not handle it. He was on the door and he was like, "Get me the fuck out of this car." Like before that, before he saw the house, he was fine. He was fine. But once he saw your parents' house, he was like, I need to be out of here right now because I've got places to be. I have people to see and I have got, like, somebody's got to be feeding him. I don't know, but it's
He's got to do.
Yeah. He like bolts it across the busiest fucking road and like goes to the apartments on the other side. Oh my God. He's gonna die.
Does he come into the house? Does he out in the house with you, or does he stay in the car the whole time?
He's in the car, and I go out to the car to sleep too, but yeah, he's in the van, so
Yeah, she'll get him in there before it's too late, and then he'll, but he's got to stretch his legs and get going. Like she can't just show up at 10 p.m. at night, stay in the vehicle, and not let him out and not let him roam for a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a roamer for sure.
Kind of owns the world a little. It seems like everywhere's his.
Yeah.
He's a little white lion. That's what he is. Yeah. Yeah. He walks like it too. He's like, I own this motherfucking street, and you can't stop me. Yeah. Anyway, surprise. We're actually already recording because
she wanted to surprise you with the wig.
Yeah.
And also just.
That was the whole reason. And we can use this last part, or we don't have to. It's been pretty normal.
Or we can keep everything we've been saying. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm cool with anything. It's totally up to y'all.
Cool. Well, should.
Yeah.
Oh, go on.
I always enjoy the conversations whenever I listen. It makes you feel like you're right there. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. So
you got to get that solid like 15 to an hour of just random talk, and then you're good to go.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. So will you introduce yourself and tell us like who you are and how you started doing pottery? It doesn't matter what your favorite color is. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm Noah Smith. I have NWS Ceramics on Instagram, and I'm also the owner of Heirloom Ceramic Studio. We're located in Sellwood, which is basically Portland, Oregon, over here on the West Coast. I started the studio about 4 months ago. Today's actually the 4-month anniversary from us opening, so it's still pretty recent with the studio things. Yeah. Yeah, and it's going really great over there. I started pottery about maybe a little more than 4.5 years ago. Okay. So I started when I was in college, actually. So I went to school for biochemistry. So I was studying the sciences and was really into research.
Of course you did.
That whole kind of stuff over there. And I was kind of thinking about going down that path for a while. But I found pottery as kind of a way to not go insane. The University of Oregon is where I was at down in Eugene, had a craft center. Shout out to them. They were awesome, really amazing folks down there. And so I took a class and I started learning ceramics, and I kind of, when it hits, you can't really stop, it's just kind of how that goes. And I started kind of growing and making down there and just kind of trying to learn. And eventually, like 2022, kind of during, I had the opportunity to actually go and get a wheel and a kiln from a family friend. I somehow looked out kind of down a far off family friend somehow down the tree. She was moving from house to an apartment down in San Diego, so pretty far from Oregon. And so I flew down there. I loaded up a U-Haul with a wheel and a kiln and a bunch of other stuff, and I drove it back up to my little basement apartment I was staying in Eugene, and I set it all up. I wasn't able to set the kiln up, sadly, but I got the wheel set up in my little basement. I started making and selling at some potters, like selling at some farmers markets and some other little shows and things like that. And trying to take it maybe a little more seriously, just like enjoying it more, kind of starting to find the art a little more and see, what people are making outside of just my local studio, and kind of having my mind blown about some of that, seeing what's going on Instagram and just, in books and museums, and starting to listen more and see some more contemporary work and stuff too. And then I was working for a year doing research after I graduated in a lab, and I was thinking about going to get a PhD or do research or something like that. And it just didn't really seem like the right path for me at that moment in time. I just wasn't really super stoked on where that would have left me off after I followed that. And so I moved up to Portland in September of last year, 2022. My fiance was living up here at the time, and so we were like apart for the year while I was working down there, and we moved back up. And I got a job. I was kind of looking for jobs in biochem and kind of doing research, or just like, anything that can pay me money to, not be as broke as I was in college. And I actually ended up finding some work at Pratt & Larson, which was a tile manufacturer, is a tile manufacturer up here in Portland. They do kind of high-end tile. I was a glaze maker over there, so I was pumping out glazes all day, kind of working on some, working with the team to kind of help fix glazes and just working with materials. And I was also teaching at a studio up here called Elemental Studios, which is kind of a smaller little kind of wellness focused studio. And that was when I really first started teaching outside of kind of personal lessons and things like that. And then about a year later, which is, I guess, this September, or I guess maybe like a little bit later, I kind of started chatting and learning a lot more about the scene here in Portland. I was really getting involved with making a bit more and just trying to be part of that scene, selling at some art shows and things like that. And eventually I kind of got the idea that, maybe a community studio or maybe something like that in my future. I've always kind of approached pottery as a means to build community and to kind of build relationships and to help folks out. I really enjoy making pots and doing that, but I've kind of always said, to me, at least, pots are a little bit of an excuse to do kind of all the other stuff that I get to do when it comes to that. I love the ceramics and I really, really appreciate the art form and making for myself, but I really appreciate what it can do and bring people together. And that sort of, when you make pots, you kind of get it, it brings something to your life that nothing else can really fill. And so I was eventually able in July 7th is when I was able to acquire the space. I kind of put together a plan and I got some stuff. I raised some money for myself, and then I was able to luckily get some investors that kind of believed in what I was doing a little bit. And I found the space in Sellwood and pulled the trigger. And July 7th is when I got the space. And then nice. I was working very hard. It was a lot of work. Oh my goodness, set up a studio. I'm sure, Becca, with the space you had and stuff too and all that. It is wow. But about a month later, August 14th is when I opened doors. And, I was teaching 3 of those classes there. I was doing 3 beginner classes. It's pretty wheel focused, but we do have some hand building and stuff that goes on there too. And then, we've been going solid since then. I think last month, maybe a little bit before that, we hit our max cap for members. So probably in about 3 months, we really hit capacity, and then classes have been selling out, and
nice.
It's been kind of flying. I'm honestly really, really surprised and really, honored and, super happy that the community around there has just been so supportive of what we've been doing. Right now, I've been able to, I hired one other instructor. Her name's Sarah Hensel. She's another really great maker in the area. And I have another one coming in February. His name is Twig Cosby. Both really stellar makers. I look up to them as makers and kind of just for what they do in the community. Twig last year did something called the Queer Cat Firing over at East Creek, Onagama, which was a big event they did where they really offered, I think it was like 40 or 50 folks that they raised money for that event to just come and do some free wood firing and really kind of make an impact in the community. So I really appreciated what he was doing over there too. And then I have a resident artist named Eric Martinez at my studio as well. So I kind of created some space for him to come in and focus on. He does a lot more sculptural art. And then I have a student resident as well. His name's Connor, and he's in his last year of product design at the University of Oregon. I'm working to kind of bring in a high school intern right now as well. Somebody that's kind of in their, I think they're believing their junior year right now, and they're kind of interested in pursuing ceramics possibly in the future. So kind of to provide a space for them as well. And then we actually just got our BIPOC scholarship, our first BIPOC scholarship for one of our classes off the ground as well. We were able to raise some money with a raffle we did last weekend. And so we're going to have another student attending one of my beginner classes as well that's fully paid for, with the studio raising some money and us putting in some money our own as well. So really, my goal with the studio has been really giving back to the community and really being very community focused in what we're doing, focusing on the members and their art, focusing on the professional artists in the area as well and what they can do. I really have an appreciation for the fine contemporary side of what people can do. I've seen, I really, besides y'all, another big podcast for me was Tales of Red Clay Rambler, Ben Carson. And that was really impactful and kind of me being exposed to a lot of that contemporary work going on. And I really appreciate what people talk about and what they do. But I also have a really big appreciation for just hobby artists and kind of the ability to bring ceramics into your life without letting it take over your life, which can maybe be a hard balance sometimes, but
For sure.
But I wanted to create a space that was really accessible for people, that they could come in, whether they're a member or a student, and feel like they can really come and learn and be supported by the community and by the teachers there too. And people have really been, very excited about that too. It's, going well. So
That's awesome.
Long story short, yeah. Thanks for
all right, we're done
there for
Thanks.
a second, but yeah.
Yeah, seriously, I'm like, wow, that was a lot.
Yeah.
That
Sorry,
you've
I know.
done
Yeah,
so
all
much.
at once.
No,
Yeah.
you're good.
It's happened real fast. I feel very lucky and privileged to really get to where I'm at. I've had some really amazing opportunities given to me. And so my goal right now is to really try to give those opportunities back and keep this thing being sustainable and grow a little bit, not too much. I don't want to get, I like being to have some hand on it and really make sure it's personable and give back to people and make it a really good, unique experience. But oh my gosh, I've really lucked out. It's been really amazing. Yeah.
So you mentioned community a number of times. Did you get that community studio feel when you were in Oregon at school, or what sparked that? It seems like you would have had to have been part of that, or would have been without that, to say that that's been such a focus for you now of what you're trying to achieve. Build.
Yeah, I think that so when I was at university, I think there was a bit of that community feel there, and then I started in 2019, and then everything happened in 2020, and so to kind of start finding something that you felt was really yours, and then or just to be part of something, not even just yours, but everybody's. And then I kind of feel that ripped away. You kind of start to really maybe get a bit more of appreciation for what that space can do. I think too, growing up, I never really considered myself that artistic. I went to culinary school for a little bit before I decided to go into the sciences, but I kind of thought about that more kind of on a craft, or not even really craft, but just kind of doing a job perspective. And so I don't really feel like I found, expression and being artistic until I was, a little bit older, not a kid. And that was just so impactful in my kind of way of being and my way of living. And so I don't know, I saw how much that could impact me in my life, and I really just wanted to share that with others. And I've always just, I felt like the community is, if I want to make an impact and actually do something that can, is worthwhile with my life. For me personally, that's getting other people involved in what I'm doing and helping them find meaning in their life as well. Whether that's just playing with mud, or, kind of having a good conversation with people and discussing kind of the struggles and the successes that come along with all that sort of stuff. So, yeah.
Nice.
That's wild. So, how do you feel so far? Are you stressed? Or are you constantly stressed? Or are you not stressed? We kind of we mentioned the money on the West Coast, it takes a lot to live in that area.
Yeah.
Is that something that you're worried about? How do you real talk? How do you feel right now?
Yeah.
With this whole transition?
Honestly, I feel really good. I think from my perspective, I was not making a lot of money out of college, kind of working factory, or just my job afterwards. I'm privileged enough that I've been able to kind of make enough at least to get by and afford my rent in my apartment and stuff like that,
Yeah.
But I think that for me right now, at least, I'm feeling really good. Going into this, I really focused on creating a plan that was sustainable for the long run. I was really trying to think about, okay, if I hit my capacity or I hit this, I'm going to be able to bring in enough to at least pay myself, a livable wage. And then I also really focus on paying my employees really well too. So everybody there is making like, a good money working for me. And then, making enough at least that the business can put a little bit away. So because we hit that so fast, I'm doing totally fine. I'm doing really good. Good. Everything's kind of hitting the marks that I want to hit. And we're not massive. So it's about 1,000 square feet. So it's really not a huge studio.
Right.
Cost us probably it was like $30,000 to $35,000 to really get the studio going. And I'm always a very open book when it comes to stuff, but we've already pretty much made that back within the first couple months, which is pretty amazing.
Fantastic.
Wow, that's great.
And so, now it's just kind of saving. A lot of it's going and being reinvested back into the community though as well. This being my first business and me really learning about, really taking care of a large studio as well, or a larger studio than outside of just myself. I'm always kind of putting money back in, whether it's supplies or new tables or, new equipment or things like that for the people. And then I'm kind of keeping my eyes out too. We have a pretty large wait list already for our membership too. We have like 20 something folks on that. And so eventually I'd like to maybe look at moving into, or maybe expanding to a member space as well. That's a little bigger to kind of accommodate that too. So I'm not rolling in dough, I'm not making a bunch of money or anything, but
we don't expect that, but like,
that's not why we're doing it,
Yeah, for sure. What was I going to ask? I was going to ask if you've ever read the book Profit First.
I don't know. I don't think I have.
Okay.
I know I definitely heard of it, but
you need to read it.
Profit First. Okay.
Yeah. And it's one of those books. What's cool about it is that like the author's like, here's the deal. In the first, it's like statistically people drop out of a book after the first 3 chapters. And so he's like, I'm going to tell you everything that's in this book in the first 3 chapters, and then we'll dive deep. So I've only read the first 3 chapters, but I figured it out. So like,
yeah.
But it's really good, especially if you're starting a business. I wish that I would have read that before What's
kind of the focus? Like, what is those 3 chapters that you can share with the folks here that maybe will or won't read it?
So essentially what it is that ideally, instead of paying your bills, you need to be paying yourself first. So it kind of like flips the normal reaction to money in backwards. So and it's not focusing on like paying yourself a ton, but it is focusing on basically setting up like 5 different bank accounts, one for profit, one for bills, one for salary, one for taxes, and then one for expenses, I think. Like just regular
bills.
Random happenings, Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember the 5th one. But like dedicating a certain percentage of your earnings to profit. So like I do that via Square. So everything that comes into Square, I get 5% and put it straight into profit, and then dedicating a certain amount to taxes and not touching it until you have to pay taxes. And like, and like it goes down the list of basically like splitting all of your incomes into those separate categories, but making sure that you are actually paying yourself and giving yourself a profit to your business, because a lot of people, oh no.
And this is talking.
I don't know what happened there, by the way. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm sure I'm back, but it just
okay. Your voice is there. I'm sure your video will catch up.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's basically like saying, because like when I started my business, I was like, oh, I'm gonna put all this money like back into the business, blah blah blah. But I just like so far deep into debt and didn't have like any money.
You were kind of an afterthought. You didn't prioritize your own supporting yourself.
Yeah, and so that kind of like makes it so that you basically do that first, and you always have a little bit, and it's mostly kind of like, hey, even if you have $1,000 in profit, that's still $1,000.
Yeah.
Like you still made $1,000, you know? So yeah.
Thank you. No, I'll definitely be looking into that for sure. I think something too with the business and, that I'm kind of trying to treat it as too is I'm pretty lucky that this is definitely a passion project of mine. This is something I care a lot about beyond, I would be lying if I said, or I wouldn't be lying. I don't know how to say it, but making money is not my end goal of this business.
Right.
I guess I should say, sustainability is part of it, and that's built in because that's what makes it possible to do in the long run and kind of reach those goals. But, at the end of the day, you kind of like what you said, like you have to take care of yourself before you can actually make all the cool shit happen, right?
Yeah.
So you got to take care of all that stuff going on, which is what that's kind of a big thing that I try to build into my business plan and what I'm doing. And then from there, we can start doing the stuff. Like that's kind of the big reason I'm doing all the residencies and the internships and things like that. Is my real big thing I'm trying to do here is really impact community and impact culture, especially here in Portland. I think that I'd like to see the Portland community become more on the map. I see a lot of really good potential from the makers here and from the ceramicists here. But compared to places, like North Carolina or stuff like that, we're definitely not up there on the books. And I'd like us to, over time, really find that voice for ourselves and find that cultural impact in the world of ceramics and art in general. And, I'm not necessarily trying to be the artist that's making that statement, but if I can be somebody that can help generate a culture that produces those artists, that produces those pieces of work that are going to have cultural significance and impact, that's kind of where I, really like to be at the end of the day, 10, 20 years down the line. I look at places like the Michiana Pottery Tour and things like that. And, that sort of stuff is really amazing, seeing all that work and like, the legacy and the history of the culture that's going on in ceramics over there.
Right. And the West Coast doesn't have any of that.
Like right. What's up? Like we could have, a Willamette Pottery Tour or something like that, like I just think that, I think especially people kind of, I'm younger, I'm 25 right now. And I know a lot of other really amazing folks that are, around my age and these younger makers that really have some really unique things to say and are also just really good artists and are really amazing at making work. And I think that if we play it right and we do our thing, I think that we can really push to put ourselves on the map and really have a voice in the conversation that's going on in contemporary ceramics and in the art world as well. And that's kind of why I really focus on the residencies and stuff like that, is I really want to make sure I'm supporting the fine art that's going on as well as the hobby art. Because I'm a potter, I'm more on that craft side of things, but I still do really appreciate the capital A art, as you like to say, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering if do you think are there reasons or factors that you think contribute to why the West Coast is still catching up? Is it just obviously you haven't been in it too long, but like,
yeah,
I would suspect that like the cost of living and how expensive classes are and spaces available, like buildings are not cheap, so I would guess there's no huge studios that can offer what they can at a reasonable price without going under in a short amount of time, because it's just hard to keep up with it. Is that like realistic, or is that not kind of accurate from my hypothesis? Oh, there we go.
Hey, I'm sorry about that.
Hey, you're back.
I did not know what was going on. Skype was just giving me a hard time there for just a second.
You're back.
I really liked your question too. I was listening as you're talking about the cost of living and things like that.
Yeah, I was hypothesizing that the cost of living is part of the reason that, like, you're in the younger demographic, you're 25, but also like, I think to me, it seems like cost of living and space for studios to offer what they can at affordable rates for people that are still like growing and figuring things out. Like, it's really expensive craft to do.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that's part of the reason that it's like doesn't have this long history and just, this revolving kind of growth over time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I think that's definitely part of it. I think that, some of the biggest reasons I think that the West Coast and kind of these areas have struggled is firstly, it's definitely a cost of living. I think that, being a potter is not usually about making money. I think the people you see that are really succeeding over here are people that are doing either really good on like Instagram and are able to really find that market outside of the West Coast, or create things like that. And I think that, like, when you start going bigger like that and you start working online, your market becomes more global or national. And so you don't really start to define, the voice of that individual area, compared to these local makers that are like really big parts of their community. I think too, if you're a local maker doing stuff like that, it's pretty hard, I think, to make a good living. At least here, you really have to take time. And I think, y'all have been making.
Oh, did it stick again, Becca?
Yeah.
Oh.
Should we just do it?
No, you're good. You're good. I don't know why it's doing that.
If it's going in and out too much, you can just turn the video off, and the audio's most important, obviously. But
I'll do that. I'll do that.
And we'll just see if the connection stays consistent.
Yeah.
And
should we turn them all off? Would that help?
Right. I have good internet, so I think Skype is just sometimes weird for me too. So, but I think too, kind of going on to that point is that that cost of, I think it takes like a solid like 10 years or so really to start to create, really find that voice in that craft and to find that following and things like that. And to spend 5 to 10 years just like working at an art form that's not going to be paying you that much, like that's a long time to dedicate to something without having that support. So either, you got to live somewhere where the cost of living is low enough and you can maybe have some property or something like that where you can actually go and make this art. So I think that that's kind of one of the biggest issues here too, is that, and I think too, traditionally, I think the East Coast is a little bit, I think there's a lot more natural resources and natural pottery made in the East Coast. If you look at like kind of the clay deposits and some other, minerals that are available in these places, especially to, local potters, it's a lot nicer in a lot of those places. North Carolina kind of is what I always come back to, but, like you have Starworks over there that's making all their local clay from around the area, and things like that are just, I'd love to have resources like that over here, but I don't even know if they really, even exist, on the side of the continent. And I think too, it's just, you look back to that kind of big movement of studio potters and just potters as artists kind of coming out in the 1950s and 1960s. And that was an East Coast thing as well. Maybe some stuff in California and things like that, but a lot of that culture really started in, you look at Alfred University up in New York, and you look at some other places over on the East Coast, and that's really where a lot of people started taking that seriously as an art form. And I think it's slowly migrating over here. People are definitely into it. People definitely love pottery over here, but learning to appreciate that art form and learning how to create a supporting, practice with that too can be pretty difficult as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. I have an opinion on this as well.
I'm curious.
Yeah. I mean, you weren't too far. You were just outside Seattle. So,
yeah. So I was outside Seattle, and it's interesting that I've always said this about the West Coast versus the East Coast, and I will continue to say this, even if it proves me wrong, probably, is that people from the West Coast are ride this wave with me. They're pretty shallow. They're shallow, but they're really nice, and people on the East Coast are not very nice, but they're not shallow. So the East Coast community is like everything to them, so like once you're in, you're fucking in for life.
Yeah.
And the West Coast community doesn't matter as much to them. It's more about the individuality, and it's more about like charging your own path essentially. And they're nice to you. They're like immediately nice to you because they're really friendly, but they're not gonna invite you into their space quickly. So there were so many potters around me when I was in Monroe, and I met maybe 2 of them. Like the amount of people that just work by themselves and don't talk to anybody is insane.
No doubt, yeah.
In that area.
Yeah.
It's like
you're definitely on something. Yeah.
Yeah, like up and down the coast of Washington and Oregon, there's probably 50 plus potters. Like,
oh yeah, even more, definitely even more, hundreds, I think.
Yeah, hundreds. There's like country pottery is rampant in the fucking Oregon coast. It's insane. It's like it's almost like there's too much of it, but nobody talks to each other. They just like do their shit. A lot of them are old men and or like old women, and they just do their shit. They sell their shit. People know, and they come to Cannon Beach because like Susie makes pottery in Cannon Beach, and I always get a mug from her every year. And so that's the type of people you're dealing with there. So they're not really like looking, in my opinion, I don't think they're really looking for a community. I think they're looking to just be hermits in the woods. And
that's kind of the Oregon hippie vibe, right? You know?
Yeah, for sure. It's like the Oregon, my favorite fucking pottery store is in Oregon. And of course I'm blanking out on the Mossy Creek Pottery is in Oregon. It's like under Lincoln City, and literally you can barely see the sign to it. It is in the woods, and it takes a mile to get off this freeway that there's like a 1 foot sign. And I mean, the work there is phenomenal. They just don't want to talk to you.
I think I think it's interesting what you're saying too, because I think I agree with you in the sense there's a lot of really great work, and I think there's a lot of traditional ceramics here, or people that have been doing it for a while, but they're kind of doing their thing. I was talking earlier about that Andy guy, right? Like he's kind of just off doing his thing, right? That's kind of literally what I said in the beginning of this thing, right? And I feel like there's a bit of a gap too between some of the older folks and then kind of the people of my generation. I don't really meet a lot of people in between. So, I'm not exactly sure what the zeitgeist was going on during that time, but I see a big rise in craft and making right now, kind of in my time. And then there was a big then, but 80s, 90s, early thousands, I'm not sure what was going on there, but at least over here, it seems like I just don't meet as many potters, I mean, of course there are ceramicists here that are from those eras and those times, but at the same time, a lot of folks are kind of just, they want to branch out and do their own thing. And that's kind of a big reason I wanted to start the studio as well, was that, creating community that branches into other communities as well is a big part of kind of what I'm trying to do too. Really, I think that a lot of ceramic studios here kind of stick to themselves. And I've been trying to really, as much as I can, connect with other people and other studios and just other things happening to build that rapport and to build that culture. Kind of you talked about that group, right? That you kind of see on, you're saying you see on the East Coast and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it seems like there's kind of this not like they're kicking people out or being super exclusive, but it's you kind of start seeing these names go around and they all circle around each other, which is kind of cool. Yeah. So, I see people in your podcast and others, and it's then you start hearing names and looking up stuff, and you just see that they're all kind of, you're all swirling around each other doing stuff. And I don't see that as much over here. And my hope is that we can start, generating that sort of culture over here, because obviously you get really great work out of it. So,
it's a very guarded, people in Portland and Seattle and those areas are very private, and when I was in Seattle area and went to, the studios and went to Tacoma Clay Art Center and all that shit, I think it took them a while for somebody to meet somebody like me, who's very open to just let's communicate, let's talk
you're
about
chatting,
these
you're talking, you're open, right? I think that you're not secluding yourself, and I try to be that way too, but that's what I appreciate, even hearing y'all talk, and Becca too, as well. As kind of you always seem if you're at a convention or I don't know, anywhere, some people are going to know you because you're willing to actually talk with people. And maybe, it's kind of if you look, when I was in the sciences, people are kind of that classic, there's some of that classic, the nerd kind of keeping quiet, kind of keeping their head down, doing their thing. And there's some people that are definitely like that too. Of course there's not, but it's the same kind of deal of I think with artists and things like that and craftspeople, some people really have to keep to themselves. But at the same time, I think, it's they want to be part of a community, and maybe they're just not used to that as well. And so showing people that you can be part of a community, people aren't just going to steal your artwork or something too, or people aren't just going to take everything. It's you're going to be valued as an individual and not lost in the crowd too. You're going to be uplifted by everybody being around you instead of, blending into that sea of the voices happening there. So,
Yeah.
which, maybe fears that these people have as well.
Yeah. That's
What's
interesting.
what's the population of your studio like? Is it a lot of folks around your age? Is it like
Yeah.
late 20s, 30s? Do you have some older folks around, or like?
It really, really spans. So I do have some folks my age that are in here. I'd say the average is probably like 30 to 40, maybe. I honestly, I've really lucked out that I have a very diverse group that's here at my studio, at least for members and for students. I think that I didn't know, would I see more people my age or not, but I think I've met some people and have some members here that have been potters for like 20, 30 years, things like that. And I have some people that just started in my first class in July, and are, making some really cool stuff and kind of working in that group. And they're really spanning a lot of different ages as well. I was thinking about that a little bit ago, like what is my, audience like? And it's kind of everyone, which is maybe just a pottery thing now. I think I'm lucky enough that I think right now craft culture and pottery culture is huge. We got like Seth Rogen making stuff, and we got, all this stuff going on, and we got SNL making skits and things like that too. It's like people know that pottery exists, right? And everybody's kind of wanting to get into it, kind of regardless of kind of their age. Now, I do have to say, I think that, one of the biggest issues in ceramics is, accessibility from a money perspective as well. So most folks that are in the studio can't afford the either class cost or the membership cost, which is something that is always kind of a tough edge to be on too, because of course I want it to be accessible to everyone, but I also do need the business to be sustainable, which is why I'm trying to do the BIPOC scholarship and the residencies and internships and things like that. But, so I think it's more of a socioeconomic kind of divide a lot of the time for craft, which is kind of rough sometimes, especially when, I think there's going to be a lot of great voices in ceramics, no matter what kind of background you come from with that sort of thing. So,
yeah, it's super frustrating that it's such a privileged art.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's just like you have to have money to do it. And well, I mean, you don't have to, but you have to either have money or a lot of creativity.
Yeah. and scrappy and willing to like deal with, I'm sure there's a lot of those, like, I don't know, are the students that you have there, are they just doing it for fun? Do they do it as like an escape? Do they do it as a side hustle and they're trying to, just they need a spot to use a bunch of equipment that they can't afford to have, or they don't have the space for it, or?
Yeah. And I think majority of folks, because I don't really, the studio isn't set up for production use because it's smaller. So I'm not, people can make quite a bit and they're welcome to sell and do whatever they want. Like last weekend, we had our first studio sale where I just let members, put work out, sell work. And, I didn't take any of the profits or anything from that. I'm just letting them do their thing, and we promoted it for them and stuff. And that's where we did that BIPOC raffle as well. But I think the majority of people are coming in here as like an escape. I think that's really what it is, is that sort of escape or that hobby, which is, kind of that space I'm trying to make for people. And most people that can afford to do something like that, whether it's time or money, are going to be people, that have some, some time and money, right, to do that as well. So, yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. I don't think that like, well, I mean, if I was right now in my life, I couldn't afford to take classes. I don't think.
No, I mean, I never, like, the only reason I could afford my first class is because I was a student, and I had loans and everything, but it made it a lot cheaper for me to take because I was a student there. And then the only other ways I've ever accessed clay has been through my career and my job. It's either been, I either luck out by somebody, giving me a wheel, right? But that still cost me a lot of money. I was pretty broke that entire summer. That's kind of where that heirloom thing comes from too. Eating tomatoes all summer long. It's all I could really eat after I got my wheel and everything. But I got a job working in a factory and I was able to use their kilns on the weekends, or I was working at a studio and doing stuff like that. So, I'm like very privileged and fortunate now that, it's my space and I'm able to kind of, I'm the one that has that at the end of the day. But, it's only really been through my working that I've been able to afford that sort of stuff. I think as a leisurely activity, I definitely would not, have the money to be able to do something like that, which is always, I don't know, it's kind of weird to kind of sit on that side, but if you love it so much, you kind of do tend to find a way to somehow afford it in one way or another, whether it's your time or, your career or whatever it might be. So
It's funny because I was just thinking about this the other day that now that I'm in like year 10 or 12 or whatever year I'm in
yeah.
of doing this, like I would say in the first 7 years, I spent so much goddamn money on like tools
Oh.
and like shit that I just didn't need,
Yeah.
And I mean, well, I guess I did need it, but I didn't, and now that I have everything that I need, I spent like $400 last year on ceramic supplies. Like,
That's insane. Yeah.
I spent literally no money on ceramic supplies, and because of my studio setup right now, which is great, I don't spend any money on power because he takes care
Yeah.
of the power. But I mean, like, we
Yeah.
did get a rent hike, but it's still it. But
Yeah.
I think about like the expenses that you make, like when you're in your position right now, and
Yeah.
then to what we are in right now, because I feel like you're the same too, Ryan. Like, we spend very little money just generally on our business because we have everything that we need. And but when you're in a position like you, where you're like constantly having students, members, constantly somebody's like, we need another wheel, we need this,
Right.
like
Yeah.
you're just
They want,
spending
I just went and
so.
picked up, I spent a couple $100 on underglaze yesterday, for people, because I wanted them to have some stuff to play with, and, things like that.
Yeah,
It's like, you're trying to give them a good experience, but it's gonna, yeah, it costs a lot. Ceramics is not cheap, for
it
all
is.
that fun
Yeah,
stuff that they get to use. So
And I would suspect a
yeah.
lot of those materials are tougher to come by in the West Coast, or more expensive, or no?
they're about the
It's
same.
pretty easy for the most part.
Okay.
I can get pretty much everything I need. We have I use like Georgie's Supply for a lot of stuff just because they're local,
It's
but you can
huge.
get most stuff online too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do all my glaze making as well. So like everything's a house glaze that I make because I'm a big nerd for all the chemistry stuff. That's I teach workshops and do a lot of things on that. I think that's kind of where like my big love for the craft comes from. So that does save me some money just by like knowing how I can make glazes. We got like this Custer feldspar going away, so I can like figure some of that out, or maybe I don't want to use lithium anymore, stuff like that. So I can figure out how to do that sort of stuff. Save
I
us some
have
money too.
I have so many people I want to connect you with because you're such a
I'd love
nerd
to.
in the chemistry. Andrew Linderman, I think, is your like soul
I'd
pottery
love to.
mate,
Yeah.
because he used to be a chemistry teacher. Did you know that,
Oh,
Ryan?
okay. I
Yeah.
didn't. Oh,
Yeah, he used to be a high school chemistry teacher, right?
Yeah.
really?
And sometimes
I love his pots too. So
I love Andrew so much, and sometimes I forget that he's as smart as he is because he's so goofy. And like I was at his house, and he was just he just fucking he was sanding pots, and he rigged this system where he just had a bucket of water, and he like siphoned out a hose, and it just like auto drips onto the
oh.
pots while he's sanding. And I was like, what the fuck? And he's like, well, it's the gravity above. And I'm like, oh god, I forgot that you're so fucking smart. Like,
Mhm.
he's a very, very
That's
smart
funny.
guy.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'd love to. I'm always trying to meet new folks. I think the bigger the community, the better. You know what I mean, too.
You
So
should
I'm
do
always
a
trying to
John
reach out and
Britt
meet these people.
workshop.
Oh, I'd love that. Oh, that's no, don't worry. That's on my that is a life goal of mine, is to meet that guy. He's definitely been a huge inspiration for some of the stuff I do, and I've learned a lot from him too, from his books and watching some seminars that he's given and some stuff like that too. But yeah, that is definitely in the maybe in the next couple of years or something I can pull something like that off. So yeah.
My
Yeah, he
friends
still
just did
travels and
that.
does some workshops.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I heard. Didn't you do? You did
The
an interview
Beals
with
just
him
did one,
recently,
I
right?
believe, and I
Yeah,
think
it wasn't
Yeah.
me. It was the Beal Pottery, and now John Britt and Eric Beal are besties.
I
So
don't
Yeah, and
think
their
John
space
Britt's
looks
not too
amazing.
far,
They're doing
right?
cool stuff.
I
Yeah.
think he's out. Is he over here in the Midwest somewhere?
I don't know.
I can't remember where he's at, but I
I'll
don't
look
think
it
he's
up.
too far.
Yeah.
No, I was curious. Are there as you're building this, are there other studios local to you that you can kind of use as kind of comparison a little bit, see how they run things, or kind of
Yeah.
have there been other ones that have popped up and closed
Mhm.
or moved, or that kind of give you some sense of a template or something to compare to kind of make better
Yeah.
choices or different choices or what you want or don't want?
Definitely. So, I was working at that studio before. And then basically before I opened this space, I went and did a couple informational interviews with a couple different owners. So I did an informational interview with that owner. It was called Elemental Studios. I did a couple other informational interviews with some other people, kind of North Carolina. Okay. Yeah, like I said, North Carolina is the best place for clay. It's got
Becca
John Britt.
just
Like, what
sent
else
out
do you need?
John Britt's
You
in
know?
North Carolina. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I just kind of looking stuff up too and figuring out as I go along. Because right now we do classes, we do 8-week classes, and then we do monthly memberships, and I just do month to month. I don't do a contract. I want people to really I want it to be easy and accessible. And then I include all my glazes, I include all my firings and everything too. And then we do workshops as well when we have time. My resident artist is also doing a 8-week like sculpting workshop because he does sculpting and things like that too. So we're always kind of offering stuff. But I think most studios are run somewhat similarly. It's kind of that membership class sort of thing. And then from there, you decide like how much of a finger do you want to have on people. And a big part of my role has kind of been, I think we're all adults and I think we can all kind of handle ourselves. I'm not having kids in the studio. It's a 16 plus studio. So, everybody is very responsible for what they're doing. And if there is an issue, I always chat with people, but there really hasn't been too many issues. I think that if you treat people respectfully, they're going to respect you, and they're going to respect the space that they're in and take some ownership in that as well. And I'm sure there'll be issues in the future that I'll have to deal with, but at the same time, I think that people really appreciate that. Me not micromanaging them and telling them what to do and things like that. I just say, hey, make sure to leave some space so I can do this, or put the things here that need to go here, and they'll go through. But I think too something especially in the Portland area, I'm not sure what it's like where y'all are at or what you've seen, but there's a lot of new studios kind of popping up too. I'm definitely not the only one. I think I got in a good spot, in a good place when I needed to. There's like not many studios around where I'm at. I don't know how well you know Portland, but I'm kind of far southeast Portland, kind of right on the border of the city between
Okay.
I live in the suburbs in a city called Tigard, outside of like Sellwood area of Portland. And there's more stuff kind of as you go north into the city by the river and things like that. But there's a lot of other studios kind of popping up and people are making it, seems like they're making it happen. This is kind of where it comes into me trying to chat with people and meet them, and not everybody always wants to talk all the time too, kind of like what Becca was saying is, and I think people see things as competition sometimes and things like that too. But I think, if you're doing a good job and you're taking care of your community, I don't think you're going to be, really losing anybody.
Yeah.
But honestly, even around here at least, and maybe it's just going to be the culture around the States and stuff too. But I think kind of the micro studio seems to be becoming more popular. I think that when you start getting big and creating these big ceramic institutes and things like that, it takes a lot of, I think I've talked with one of my friends about this, but a lot of calories to feed that beast,
Yeah.
And these things are a little more approachable and a little more sustained by the direct communities around them. Most people that come here are probably within like 5 to 10 miles of the studio. And they just, it's pretty amazing that many people that want to be involved in something like this, enough that we got people waiting for a while for something like that. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to see where that'll go to. And I'm always checking in. I got friends in the industry and some other owners that are friends of mine, and we're always kind of chatting here and there. But I kind of based my initial plans off of, how can I, like, what's a sustainable way to have a class and have a membership, and then kind of build out from there. And I think that it's just kind of, I think you were saying earlier, Ryan, like potters are kind of gritty. They're kind of, intuitive, right? You figure out how to make it work. You always kind of do. And I think that's kind of what we're doing here as well. So.
Yeah. Oh, I just had something in my brain. I was going to ask you something. Oh, wait. Oh, yeah. I was going to say it's, first of all, I think that you're I want to say that you sound extremely like intuitive as far as business goes. The fact that you even have a business plan puts you leaps and bounds ahead of most people. Second, I think it's interesting that like you're talking about the micro studios, and I'm just curious if you have like a top, like a peak, like a what am I saying? Like
What would be your
a
ideal?
roof. Like what's the roof? What's the
Yeah,
like
definitely. I think so for me, we have a lot of people still in the Sellwood area that are looking, especially for membership. So I'd like to open another space that can accommodate as much of that as I can. But I'm not trying to push that and oversaturate just space. I think that, when I think of a roof, I'm not necessarily thinking about just studios, but also, other kind of artistic endeavors. So, I think one more space at least is something I'd be interested because it's just going to make the business more sustainable in the long run too. But after that, it might be having a little gallery or, having some other sort of venture that is somewhat related to it and like part of the business and part of what we're doing, but not 100% the same. A big thing for me, and this is something I don't see a lot, is being a huge glaze nerd, being a huge into materials and the material sciences. I'd love to have like, a test studio or a lab or something like that where people can actually, be members there or something like that, where it is like ceramic. It is involved in ceramics, but the goal there is, maybe we have a massive library of materials that you can purchase like actual small amounts of. You don't have to go out and buy like a 50-pound bag of EPK to have some stuff sitting around.
Mm-hmm.
And you can purchase and you can test. And then, having, electric firings, having some gas firings, maybe even having some atmosphere stuff going on. That's kind of another part of that goal is instead of just trying to think about studio expansion, I really want to think about stuff that is complementary to what we're doing instead. And so I don't see necessarily a ceiling for that, because eventually that builds into, what am I selling my own glazes? Am I selling my own supplies? Am I doing this and doing that as well? And that's just kind of further down the line. But in terms of purely a ceramic studio and offering classes and memberships, I definitely think that, 1 to 2 more spaces max to me, especially in this area, is really what I want to do. I really value like really giving people a good class too. I only do 7 people in my classes, so it's 7 people and a teacher, and they're 3 hours long. And so that really gives me a lot of time to go one-on-one with people and not feel like I'm rushing between students and things like that. So that's something that is really valuable to me. Speaking of books, I just read a book recently called what is it? Unreasonable Hospitality. I don't know if y'all have heard of that book at all. It was by the guy. Have you heard of 11? Yeah, it's I can't remember the author right now, but he was the manager of 11 Madison Park, which is like the #1 restaurant in the world for a little bit over in New York. And he just talks about how like they're kind of. Have you ever seen The Bear? Have you seen that show?
That's what I was thinking when you were talking. Yeah,
that's like that. That's supposed to kind of be that restaurant in there, but they're more. He's more the front of the house. It's not really about being in the kitchen and stuff like that. But he talks about, what is hospitality and how do you go out of your way and how do you make people like how are you curating this experience to really make something special for people? Thank you. Yeah, Will Gadara.
Yeah.
And so I really, really appreciate that book because in my opinion, what I'm doing here is hospitality. It's about giving people a good time. Part of that is helping people make good pots. I think core to any studio is you need some good pots coming out of there, right? You don't want just a bunch of bad pots coming out all the time. You need some good stuff. But the other part of that too is really, how can I make people feel seen, feel heard, feel like they're growing, and really give them a really unique and really good experience. Part of that too is like with our classes, we're open like 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. every day of the week. There's like we kind of have a code on the door. I'm not there the whole time, but students can come in anytime, basically outside of the other class hours that are going on, so they feel like they can actually be valued and get the time. And if I'm there, I'm always chatting with them, answering questions, helping them out. Kind of being a steward of the space as well. And so that's kind of been a big thing too, is I think that if we were to get too big, I wouldn't be able to really provide that experience for people and make sure that they feel like, I want you to feel special when you're in this space, right? I think that we're lucky enough to do pottery and it is kind of a luxury business. I think at the end of the day, like it is, we're here, the prices are a bit higher than, let's say like a knitting class or something like that, right? And you should be valued based off of what you're doing too. I think you should be taken care of really well. And I mean, personally, I don't think if it was a knitting class too, I'd be taking really good care of you. I think that's just kind of a personal philosophy of mine as well. And I think that really reflects in people's enjoyment of what they've been experiencing so far. And I think that's been a big part of my success as well, is really making sure people feel seen and feel special while they're in the space. And I don't want to lose that. I really don't, So I'm very selective on the people that I choose to hire as well. They're people I know that have those same philosophies and that are able to kind of keep that going. And that's kind of my goal in the future, is to really create a space where you really feel special, and you also get to grow. People are getting better quicker, and they're making better art because of that too, I think. So, yeah.
What up, home skillets? So, we're interrupting this time because we couldn't interrupt it at the time of the time. So, I wanted to talk to you about the L&L thermocouple guard, because that's my favorite part of the new kilns, is that, how like when you have a normal thermocouple, it just like sticks out and it's just like out there all willy-nilly in front of God and everybody, and it just has no protection at all. Well, on the new thermocouples in the L&L kilns, they have a cool guard, and it's almost like a PVC pipe type thing, but it's ceramic, obviously. But it's kind of like a tube that surrounds the thermocouple, and what it's doing is that it's protecting it from any damage that might happen, so it'll get damaged before the thermocouple actually gets damaged. And also, what I think is really, really great is that none of the black, dusty stuff that happens to quite literally every thermocouple, whether you get it from one kiln company or the other, it degrades and it starts to like kind of crumble and fall, and that guard is actually going to catch all those little black crumblies. And that, in my opinion, is the coolest thing about the new L&Ls, because I haven't seen a thermocouple guard like that in any other kiln, and I just think that that's so nice. Like, what's great about it is that, you have to protect 3 thermocouples. You're not just, because there is zone control, you're not just protecting 1 thermocouple, you have to protect 3. And that just kind of takes the worry out of it all. So you can go to hotkilns.com and see what I am talking about, and find all of the L&L awesomeness that you want. They have a fantastic website that has all of the things you need, and also it has a great troubleshooting area as well. I've used it many a times, even for my kiln that's not L&L. So yeah, let's get back to our regular program.
I had a question. I'm curious if you had to choose between, or if you had to, let's not say choose between, but if you had to rank between like managing the business and people versus teaching versus I want to say like curating a gallery or the selling aspect.
Yeah.
Like, how would you kind of prioritize that personally?
In terms of like my enjoyment and things, maybe. Teaching is number 1 for me. So definitely, I've kind of thought about this for a while, but it kind of harkens back to what I said of pottery. The pots are kind of an excuse, It's like the dark secret, I love making pots. I'm always working, always playing, really inspired by the artists. But teaching others is really where I find a lot of joy and kind of meaning in my life. And that's definitely number 1 for me. I'm the one that's teaching the beginner classes. I actually have my other instructors teaching my intermediate classes because I kind of want to be the person that if you're new to the craft and new to the art, that you get to really see and feel welcomed and stuff like that. And I really value that. And I just love seeing people grow too.
And you're also like the face of the studio, so you're kind of
I think in a way a little bit.
Hey, this is what I created. This is what is here for you and available.
Exactly. I'm not really trying to make it about me either. I know it's like kind of silly to say, but you kind of have to be the face of what you're doing as well. People are going to see you when you do it, but it's not, I'm not trying to push my own art practice or anything like that through the studio. I'm really trying to push other folks. But I think at the end of the day, when you're the one putting a lot of the effort into it and the one that's really making it happen, you do become kind of a face of it as well. And then after that, I'd say it probably goes teaching and then making art and then running the business. I love making my pots. And I like it all, right? But I think at the end of the day, the business aspect is what makes it doable. And like I enjoy it, but making money doesn't really bring me nearly as much happiness as, the other two do. And so that's kind of where that lines up. if that kind of answers the three kind of
'cause
subjects you were talking
it's
about.
tough because you have to make the money to make it work long term.
You have to.
Sustainable. So
Yeah.
you have to, you can't just be like, oh well, I just want to have as many people here as possible.
No, because I could cram everybody in and then nobody's going to have a good time. I'm going to be stressed as a teacher. I'm going to be stressed as a business owner. People probably going to get mad at you. I don't know. Bad stuff happens when that goes down. And it's like, I was kind of, that's kind of where like making money is, the sustainability is important, but it's not the goal. I think a lot of businesses, this is getting a little philosophical, right? But a lot of the businesses in America and a lot of like kind of capitalistic stuff is very, my end goal is to make as much money as I can, and I get it, right? That's like security, that's safety, that's all that sort of stuff. But I think that we really lose sight of a lot of meaning when it comes to that too. And I'm really happy that, being in ceramics, I think people kind of understand, especially because like this isn't really the industry to go into if you want to make a bunch of money. I think some people can do really well, but they're the far and few in between. I think most of us are doing it because we really love it, or, we find some meaning. Or I think personally, it's really the community. I think like Becca, like you had a post, like just, was it yesterday or the day before, where you were talking about how much the community means to you and how that's how you find a lot of your meaning and like why you're in these places that you're in.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think that, you could ask a bajillion. Rachel says this all the time. She's like, there's nothing like the ceramic community. Like, it's like this complete lack of competition that's within it, weirdly enough.
At least like, within the circle that
right?
we're in and who we're talking to, that's kind of the experience that I have. Rachel's my wife, by the way.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Rachel's his wife.
Oh yeah. I know all the lore. I got all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like everybody is just rooting for everybody else, and that's a lot of the reason why you stay where you stay or you go where you go is because of the people.
Community to me is like, I found my community in pottery, and I'm, you two seem like, the same, like you found the group of people that it's not just, the pots are great and everything, and that's super awesome. Yeah. That's like where we find that commonality, but the community that comes from that is where, I don't know, that's like where meaning of life kind of comes from at the end of the day for me. I'm like, and what am I doing that, like, if I were to die tomorrow, what would make me somewhat happy or feel like at least I'm trying to do the right thing for the world in some way or another? And that community building is where I kind of find that for myself, at least. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think when you share that thread across a lot of people, when somebody needs something or something comes up, you kind of realize like, oh, okay, these are the people that I care about and that I want to like help support, and I want to, I want to keep them doing what they're doing if they're enjoying it. I don't want something to be limiting to them. Like if they're really going to that next step and they need help, like I want to do what I can to help.
Yeah. And I think that also when, to your point, I think that when if you start like a community studio and your first priority isn't the community, that can tend to backfire on you if something happens, like, because I for one, as we all know, value community a lot, and like shit happens, and like if nobody's there to be with you when that happens, you're fucked. Like,
oh yeah.
Like, no the amount of times somebody else has cleaned my studio for me because something was going on, I can't even count on my hands. Like, the amount of people that have come to help me in certain times, and I hope that I have come to help them in certain times, is just outstanding. Like, I'm so fortunate to everywhere that I've gone have had a really good community. And and if you're not doing like what you're doing and being like community first, like that's your priority, then it can like eventually will be fucked.
Yeah. People know if you care about them or not. They can tell how much you care about them too. And I think that, if somebody actually like legitimately cares about you, like I don't know, it kind of sucks, but in the world today, sometimes like you don't got that many people that might really truly care about you, and like
Yeah.
I'm pretty lucky that in my space I can like actually really care about these people and I can really care about their growth and about their well-being, even outside the studio. I've had some people really share some very, intimate and really, sad things with me, either going on in their lives or, whether it's a student and they're like, you've created a space for me to just, for a moment of my week, just get out of the situation that really was just making my life super hard. Or, hey, this is the place that I come. Like I just lost, I had some people that were going through some tough stuff with some jobs. And so it was nice that I was able to kind of give them a space, or, maybe for a month, like we chatted, I was able to help them out for a month or something like that, like creating these things where they still feel accepted and like are able to be in these areas and be in these spaces while, you feel supported. Cause it's not just about me making money. It's about being part of that space. And so, everybody really takes that to heart too. And I think that then they all support each other. The thing that's made me happiest is, I'll be in that space and I'm kind of, you as the owner and the person really setting it up, you set a tone and kind of that vibe. But the people from there, end up taking care of each other too. I've had some members that, they've become pretty good friends already. I had heard somebody say like, you'll know you're really set up when like, two of your members like end up getting like start dating or get married or something like that. So that hasn't happened yet, but we'll see, down the line, you never know. Right. But, a little pottery wedding or something like that. Right.
Yeah.
But it really is, it's like, pots are cool and like we're living our life and we're making pots and it's like super fulfilling and great, but it's like at the end we're still living our life and like having a community that's supporting you while you're living versus having something that they don't care. Like, I always want, it's fun to care and actually like, take the time to enjoy living this life together as much as we can instead of just not caring about anybody else. It's like, what else am I supposed to be doing with this time I got? Right. So yeah.
And I think it sounds like I get you don't want to be about you, but like everything you're saying is kind of like, it's kind of like the soul of the building as well as like the space. It's not, they're not coming in and they key in and then they go in there and they see signs everywhere that's like, remember not to do this and do this and this parts and this is the schedule of when this is going to happen and make sure you're not here during these hours because we have this going on. Like if it's not
Sounds
all these
like
things
you've been
that
in
they
a
need to
studio
make sure
or two,
to avoid and tiptoe around. It creates like it might not seem like, oh, just remember, like, don't forget to wipe your bottoms or like all these little things that add up that just add to like little bitty things of like, oh, I could get in trouble if like I forget to do this thing.
Exactly.
And then you're like, you feel micromanaged or you feel like, it feels more transactional. Like
exactly
I'm paying you for this
100%.
I expect this rather than like you were saying, like we have mutual respect for each other. We're adults here.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're going to make it work. And if something comes up, they feel welcome to come talk to you or you can talk to them. And it's not so like you're on a different level of like, I'm paying you, so you provide this for me.
Exactly. I don't like that sort of power dynamic, and it's like, I think at the end of the day, like I do have, power in the space in some way or responsibility as well in that space, but I'm not holding it over and I'm not using it to disrespect people or make them feel like I am above them in any way, and so I think too, it's just like, you got to be able to come to a space and just feel like you are allowed to exist in that space, And I think a lot of times if you're throwing signs up all over the place or this or that or all these rules, you might not feel like you're allowed to do certain things. At the end of the day too, like, if something ends up costing me a little more money or I got to go grind a shelf or, whatever, like, oh, I don't care. Like I'm here making pots all day. Like I'm living the dream. I'm going to be, honest, like I could be doing a lot worse right now. If something falls apart, if something breaks, it's just mud. That's what I like to say. Like it's just some mud and dirt and whatever. It's very low stakes, I think. And the moment you start letting that get to your head, the moment the money becomes the sole focus and that starts being what's really the issue and things like that, is when I think that you can start kind of losing sight. And I'm fortunate enough, that I'm not, at my wit's end and I'm not like really trying to scrape by and stuff like that. And that is partly why I'm able to kind of behave the way I am. But I think part of it too is me going in, whether I was making, just enough to pay rent or, doing well. I think that I'm always going to, got to come back and kind of realize that that's kind of the way that I need to be thinking when I'm running this thing, and people appreciate that, I think. So yeah.
I had a friend that I was just thinking about this, and I think that it might just be the pinnacle of like community, in quotes, like community, where I, or maybe like the bad, I don't know, but I had a friend that was walking around my studio in like the paint a pot area when I had it, and she looked at me and she's like, do you always just like take money from your friends? And I was like, yeah, I do. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like when you are in this long enough, everybody becomes your friend and everybody just pays you and you're just
Yeah.
like, cool.
I love that. I love that. Everybody becomes your friend when you're in it. I really like that a lot. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just like,
And
yeah,
it's
you
like, but
just
they
have
want to
to
support
get,
you. Yeah. They get
you
Yeah,
have
it.
they
to
want to
get
support
really,
you, and they know that they are contributing to the space that they're making
Yeah.
themselves as well. So it kind of becomes a group effort.
Exactly.
yeah, and
100%. Yeah.
you have to get really comfortable with taking money from people that become your friends.
Yeah, sometimes you like almost don't want to, but then you're like, oh, wait
Yeah.
a second, I am running a business. I have to do this.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, then it can't exist. And that would suck way worse than, other things, So yeah.
Oh, I have
like
an
that a lot,
idea. I have an idea,
Yeah.
and I don't know how if you can put this into play or not. But I thought about this when I was done. This was a very
I'm always curious. Yeah.
this was a very short discussion in my brain. Ryan likes something that you thought about today, or is it has been dwelling for a month? This was like a day thought.
Mhm.
And I was and I was like, oh, it'd be so fun to make a paint your own pottery studio, and oh my God, paint your own pottery studio and have it be a fully, like, everybody that joins it as an employee becomes an owner of some sort, essentially. But I can talk about it, but like essentially, like, you hire somebody within the community to basically work to buy. So kind of like you would. So
almost
you
like a co-op, but yeah.
Yeah, so you hire a manager, and after 5 years, that manager becomes the owner, and then all the employees are like have a stake in the game too. But specifically, what I was thinking about was that and I did this with my studio as well, is that it's really amazing, especially in some place like Portland, to be able to have people that maybe not can't afford a studio or can't afford to like be there, to like kind of like your BIPOC scholarship, but instead have a work swap program where like they clean the floors, and for every time they clean the floor they get an hour of work, or or something like that, where it's like a swapping situation where, and it's like not, obviously it's not never ending but
Yeah.
but I mean, like, that allows you to give a little bit more back to the community, or back to somebody in the community that may not be able to afford it, but then you're also getting something back for it. So like,
Yeah.
So I had a
I like
guy,
that, yeah.
or I had a human that was Seb. They were like they never paid for classes or anything like that, and they didn't really take classes, but they mixed all my glazes for me, they cleaned things, they did all that shit, and they came in whenever they wanted to. So yeah, it was kind of like an internship situation, but
Yeah.
Anyway,
I like
Instead
that
of
too,
having like
yeah.
a studio tech that does everything, kind of the grunt work, you kind of, which I would guess, Noah, you're putting that hat on some days, and
Connor,
every day.
my resident, my student resident, does a lot of tech work for me as well, but I do everything as well, all this stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it may be one of those situations where it's like a high schooler that would never be able to afford it, and their job is to clean the floors and to wipe off all the bats and to clean everything in the glazing area. And that's, anyway, I, just because I'm like, I am you, like, we are
no,
the
I
same.
get it.
So I'm like always trying to I give everything away. I have an issue.
She does.
So
She's like, I need money, but take this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I like a lot that you say that too, because I was kind of talking about it a little bit earlier, but I'm in the works right now actually with the possible high school internship, and I'm kind of
Yeah.
thinking something very much along those lines, like, hey, come in. I'm gonna start you off, just help me clean the studio, and like that'll be some of the base responsibilities, and then you can come in when you want to make work. And then from there, being like, okay, I'll teach you how to load kilns, I'll teach you how to make glazes, I'll teach you all this stuff. And it's like, I'm still deciding too. So like with my student resident, I have him doing a lot of tech work as well, but I pay him as well because I still really value people getting paid for their work and their time. And so, but obviously you can only do that so much as well. So I'm thinking, especially with a high schooler, we'll kind of see where that goes too. I have to check with some labor law things too and make sure I'm doing everything right and all that. I'd really would be, I want to do that sort of work trade kind of thing, and it does make it more accessible, right? Because sometimes people have time, but they don't have money, right? And so that's another way to make that accessible too. I really like that you say that though, because that's like, you're right, thinking the same way. Like you want to just let everybody come and play. I wish everybody could come in and just throw all day, right? But I can't do that.
Yeah, like at one point I was like, maybe if I had a list of things that need to be done in the studio, and if somebody needed an extra hour in the studio, they just completed one of those items, or like a certain item equaled a certain amount of points essentially. And because like I never had enough money to pay people, but I needed things done and people obviously needed, so it was like, maybe I could,
figure it out, eh?
Yeah.
And I'm sure that could flex a little bit depending on the time of year, or, you just finished a class session, so you have like a deep clean that's worth so much or whatever.
And it's pretty busy right now, right? This part of the year, and then exactly.
Also, I highly, 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 highly recommend asking your members and closing down the studio for like 3 days and asking your members like after 6 months if anybody wants to like come in and just help me clean this entire fucking space. Like I had a friend who in their business they would close down for 3 days and they would just clean. And
scrub it down.
I highly recommend that, because as somebody who has had a studio much larger than yours, but still, it can get, even if you're keeping it up, it still needs a deep clean.
Oh yeah.
Every now and then.
Yeah. Oh, I see that for sure. And it's nice. I'm lucky enough, like people do a really good job of cleaning up for the most part. And like we have it where people are kind of mopping up around a little bit when they're done, just to keep their general space clean. But it gets dusty, it gets dirty, and that's where like, I'll come in and do some deep cleans, but you do kind of need to do some spring cleaning more than just in the spring. So, yeah,
for sure.
What is
thank you.
If you had to like think ahead, like what would bring you stress? Like what part of the business would bring you stress? Like would you worry about it being like at maximum and then you're stressed about how do I go to the next level and what risk is that going to involve? Or like are there other stresses that you foresee?
Yeah, I think like, like definitely when I start looking to really seriously expand to another space, that'll definitely be like a little bit of an area of turmoil where like I'm going to put a lot of time into that. There's only going to be so much time I can put into the space that's already existing and stuff like that too. So that would definitely be a time. We've been lucky. So we've been at capacity for like about a month and a half now, give or take, especially towards the end of like a class session when people are really starting to pump out some stuff. And we were able to meet demand. I'm running my kilns pretty much every day. So, I'm able to really pump through those and work through them. And they're not massive. I'm thinking about getting a new 1027. I have a 1027 and then, which is I know that y'all are L&L fans over here, but I do have a Scott 1027. I'm looking at getting a new kiln as well, but.
Yeah, you live in Portland. It's like.
Yeah.
Like we were talking to Vantiki and he got an L&L, but like. It is
Henrik
kind of sacrilege.
Henrik was saying that there's basically a Scut truck that pulls up to your building. And you're like, all right, where are we putting Scut?
Exactly.
Do you have a KM?
They're like 10 minutes away from me.
Do you have a KM 1027 or is it a Cone 8 or is it Cone 10?
Let's see. I believe it is the cam. I believe it's a Cone 10. I'm only running Cone
Okay.
6 electric right now. But for studio use, I always want to. I'm gonna spend a little more to get something that's gonna last me a little bit longer.
Well, you
Uh,
technically you want a cone 10 for 6.
yeah.
Yeah, cone 8s should only be low for low fire.
I like you
but
did that analogy a little bit ago of like, why would you really want to drive if your car can go 220? Do you want to drive your car at 220? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, not
Yeah.
really. I like that a lot. It's a good analogy. I use that with my students sometimes. When we're
Yeah.
chatting.
Yeah. So you're at a 1027 right now, so that's a 10 cubic foot.
7 cubic foot, and then
7
I have a
cubic
Crest E23, which was the kiln that was given to me, and that's like a 3.5 cubic foot. And
You
that's
have
my
a
little guy.
Crest?
That's the one, Chuck. Yeah, that's the one that that's the one I ended up with that I got when I went down to California. So the studio's the first place I was able to fire that thing up. I held on that thing for about 1.5 years, 2 years. Never got to use it. Made it through a couple moves, and it's doing great though. It's pumping through. I'm getting good
Nice.
firings.
3
My
cubic.
glazes are
I mean,
looking
3
good.
cubic foot can. We were just when we were talking about kiln sizes, we were like 3 cubic foot is a nice size for.
That's a great size.
Oh yeah.
I'm guessing for a community studio, that's a good size too, as long as you have the square
It
footage.
works. It's big enough. It's big enough. I could definitely go with another 7 cubic foot. That would be solid. Another 1027 or something like that. But it does enough. We get it through. Pieces are probably coming in and out within a couple days, which is pretty nice. The backlog ain't too bad. That kind of goes into that little unreasonable hospitality side of it. But my turnover rate is pretty quick with the pieces too, which it helps me too. It helps people, really get more insight on the work. I get to pump my stuff through too a little quicker. And, with classes and stuff too, it helps out. Students are able to see their work come out a little quicker. We just had our second week of classes this week. And I throw little pots for everybody. We all trim together. So then we basically all trim. And that way I can show them leather hard and they can actually have an understanding of what that means. Because I think that's kind of like, who knows what the heck that means until you really see it.
And also,
and then
good luck
next
getting
week
a centered pot.
Yeah, exactly. So I say, and I like, I throw them like 30 seconds, little cups, throw them down, maybe, a couple 100 grams. I also lift them up. So they're a little funky, right? I don't want them to be perfect, but they're centered enough that you can trim them. And then, that way I can bisque fire them all this week. We're all going to be able to glaze together next week. And so by week 3, they already have an understanding of the full process and they can start kind of managing their own projects as well. As best as they can, but I like to really show them the process as soon as I can. And, because the goal of that beginner class is just fundamentals, it's, you have enough knowledge now on forms and throwing and the process to, if you wanted to go to another studio or, go somewhere else or take another class with us, you'll know what you're doing. Right. So kind of create that flow through with folks and stuff. So, yeah.
Is your Crest electric or is it a kiln sitter?
They're all electric. No way am I ever getting a kiln sitter. No way. I'm not messing with that. Brian, I got mad respect. Do you still use a kiln sitter?
No, I haven't had one for a couple of years since I moved to the new house. I haven't had kiln sitter.
But both of us are
spend a couple $100 on a kiln, but
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
We've both used them over the years, but
yeah.
I don't have to baby the kiln, and I mean, I get, because if I was just starting, if I was like, if I just needed a kiln, I'd only spend a couple $100 on a kiln sitter or something like that. But talking bang for your buck, like that's great, you know what I mean? But in terms of like living a life and not just sitting at your kiln for all day, it's nice to have that. So yeah.
Do you have
I remember,
do you have baby monitors or cameras on your kiln so when you go home you have
No, I don't. I trust them. I have some cameras just front facing the studio for security reasons, but I don't have anything on the kilns. They're vented out and they're good. I think if something happened, I think we'll be okay.
So you do not suffer from anxiety.
No, not too bad. I'm pretty lucky. No, I'm
Lucky you.
I'm always hoping, but at the end of the day too, it kind of goes along with it. Everything in ceramics is going to break eventually. I'm going to do my best to make it last as long as I can, but stuff's gonna go wrong, and that's why we save up money and and try to treat things as best we can. But they're gonna break, shelves are gonna get wrecked, things are gonna melt. That's okay. It's what happens. Especially in a community studio.
I like that.
Yeah.
Things are
I
gonna
got most of my glazes are pretty nice, but I got one or two I put out there for some of the people to use that I love them. I have like a titanium blue lithium glaze. It's like this really lovely like satin matte that goes into this really cool drip kind of cobalt blue gloss. But that thing, is mean, especially to beginners. It's like I put some warning labels on it and try to help them out, but that thing will wreck my shelves every once a month. Maybe I'll get a little some drifts or some stuff, but that's what the sander's for, the disc grinder, stuff like that.
So the advancers are on the list.
Oh yeah, they're on the list. I mean, they're down the line, but they're definitely on the. I'd love a pair.
That's a big ticket.
Yeah, I could spend like $60 getting a new shelf, or $200 on half an advancer, right? But they're so nice, and they're light too. I'm pretty young right now, but my back's gonna definitely feel it soon enough, and those advancers will be nice too, and all that stuff. So
Ryan just got some new ones. Tell him
new advancers.
Yeah, but I can't talk about them though. I mean, I'm testing them.
Oh, you can't talk about them?
What?
No, I can't like
off the books
for them. But I can. I got some that I'm testing some thin shelves.
Ooh,
you did not tell me that
cool.
you couldn't talk about it. I'm so sorry.
I just can't like endorse the shelves because I'm testing them.
Got it.
Are you gonna get a second sponsor from Advancer?
I don't know. Maybe we'll
Advancer,
put that on the docket
Real
for
Talk
2024
podcast.
and see what happens.
Yeah.
Come on, Malcolm.
Let's
go, Malcolm.
Yeah,
come on.
Malcolm.
Yeah, that's cool though. If they're looking for more people testing,
they're a good
Advancer
asset
shelves,
to the
let me know.
studio, and it's one of those things you're gonna have forever. I would suspect when Becca had them for her studio, they were really good for just student work that it's unpredictable what you're gonna get.
Yeah,
no, they were fantastic.
I think too, like we are very liberal in our use of cookies and stilts. So yeah, I like if I think something's gonna run, I'll throw a cookie under it. We have quite a few sitting around. That's just because and if it sticks, I'd rather stick to the cookie and say, hey, it ran, it stuck to the cookie, but your piece is not totally destroyed. I've worked at some other places that some of those shelves just I don't know if it's even worth trying to save those things anymore. Because when I got the new kiln for the studio, it's new shelves and everything, and they're looking still pretty dandy, which is nice. So
Ryan's shelves, I loaded Ryan's kiln probably a couple months ago, and I cannot. It is rough.
Which ones are you talking about?
Your regular shelves, not the advancers. Like your regular shelves have a lot of things on them. Just because they're
Are you talking
old.
about the kiln? Just because of the kiln wash?
I think so. Yeah.
I don't have a lot of crusties and stuff on that. Are you talking about I do have the speckled clay, which leaves little bitty dots on the shelves.
No, not the speckled clay, but like the shelves are like warped. They're
Oh, you're talking about the really thin ones.
Yeah, they're like warped and they're rough. I am like,
but
when
that's
you look
not
at,
rough compared to some studios. Like some community studios, clay globs that you just don't put a piece on there because you're not going to grind it.
Yep. Or it's like this has become a bisque shelf, not a glazed shelf, right?
Right. Like I keep my shelves fucking pristine, and Sarah just glazed some stuff, and she didn't realize that the glaze she got was gonna run, and I came in and there was 2 bowls in the trash, and I was like, cool, and like 2 full shelves have just like huge rings of glaze on them.
No.
Yeah.
Which is fine. It's absolutely fine because it's probably never going to happen again and we could just turn the shelf over. But
is it I'm guessing it's just a regular shelf, right? With kiln wash, or there's no kiln wash on it.
No, there's no kiln wash.
You don't kiln wash your shelves either. So yours are going to look cleaner without kiln wash on them.
Yeah, because kiln wash flakes and it's awful.
It does get on the bottom of pots. I just tell people like I'll knock it off a little or something, but it definitely I think it's like what I do for the community studio is definitely you have to think differently, right? You have to think like stuff's gonna get gnarly and messed up. What's the best way to stop that? Versus like Ryan doing your own thing, Becca doing your own thing. It's like of course you're just gonna get nice stuff because you know how to keep your stuff nice. Like maybe once in a blue moon you wreck it, but you do kind of know what you're doing, So,
once I got the advancers, I was like, you guys can do whatever the fuck you want. I like if you don't want to glaze the bottom, fine. If you if you want to glaze the bottom, fine. I don't fucking care. You do whatever the fuck you want because it's not on me anymore. Like,
magic eraser.
Yeah. I just feel like the regular shelves, I still want to put kiln wash. Like it doesn't run that much, but if it does, like I just want to be able to get it off of the shelf. Like I would never risk just a bare shelf with no kiln wash on it. That just is
some
too
clay
much of a
flux
risk
is
for
so
me.
much too. You know,
I
some
just
darker
put-
clays and stuff. Yeah.
Well, I put alumina on my shelves. I don't put nothing. I put alumina on them. So if they do flux, the alumina helps with that. But yeah, I used to put like a thin layer of kiln wash on, and I just don't anymore.
Well,
What can
with
I
your
say?
stuff, you don't have anything. Well, your fancy cups, nothing is going to stick to the shelf.
Yeah.
It's not even possible because unless
Yeah.
your clay plucks or something like that. But
Right.
all you
Yeah,
have is a
like-
liner glaze. So
I run me and Sarah, my studio mate, literally like in almost every situation would never have anything stick to the kiln because she's not glazing the outside of her pots and I'm not glazing the outside of my pots. So
Yeah.
and her underglaze
Most of my
does
work,
not.
yeah,
She
too,
doesn't underglaze
yeah.
the feet.
she does, but doesn't stick.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
No, I feel that too. Most of my like personal work nowadays is I either spray on some slip or I use terra sigillata or something like that. So it's a lot
Yeah.
less, it's not really fluxing onto the shelf or anything, which is nice. So yeah.
Yeah.
But everybody likes glaze, so
Becca, I'm curious, going through like Noah's where he's at and the growth potential and like if he fills up, like are there things that you foresee with a community studio that he should consider, like that's worth spending time focusing on or avoiding? Because there's a lot of different ways he can go with it. He's talking about maybe expansion or where do you focus? Do you focus on memberships, teaching, workshops?
Yeah, well, I definitely think that workshops are great. I think the biggest thing that I always think about, especially with somebody that's kind of like you, where you're like so based in community or so based in sharing and stuff like that, is that you're going to have to really, like, once you get into this, you're going to have to really have some hard boundaries. Some super fucking hard boundaries.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing. That
I'm so happy to hear you say that.
Yeah.
Because I already feel that in ways that I need to start really putting that stuff down.
Yeah.
How so? I'm curious what Noah, how you would answer.
Yeah.
How so? And then Becca, what do you mean when you say that?
Yeah.
So like an example is I have so during our class hours, I do have some wheels and a little bit of space open for people to come in if they book on our calendar. So we have like 12 wheels in the studio. 12 wheels? 10 wheels. Sorry, 10 wheels in the studio. The 8 wheels are kind of set up in a classroom, kind of in not a circle, but kind of 2 lines so we can all see each other. And then we have 2 wheels to the side, and then like a little hand building table and a glazing area. And people, when I kind of started, were kind of just stopping in when they wanted to, and they weren't always booking out these spaces, and it just led to too many people coming in. And I was like, oh yeah, it's cool, you can come in, like, because it didn't seem like an issue. And so lately, especially at the start of the new session, I just put down some firm boundaries, like, okay, you have to book on the calendar when you come in. Like, I put some more space here, I got some more table space, I got this and that, but you have to book. You can't just pop in. As much as I want to be like, hey, you can be spontaneous and pop in when you want. Like, if you want to check on a pot on your shelf, that's fine, right? But if you want to do work, you have to book. And that was something that I really had to put my foot down on, because some people definitely were kind of like, oh, I like to just be able to come in whenever I want and be spontaneous and do my thing. And I totally get that, and I really respect that too. But for me to run a business and to run the studio, I have to have some sort of scheduling. So that's been part of it too. Another one is like, sometimes students will basically the way it works at the studio. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Is the main reason to have them book is so that people have equal opportunity to reserve the space so it's not overloaded, or is it because they're conflicting with classes that are already established and have scheduled times?
The big thing, so no, everybody knows not to be using like the class wheels. They know, and I would let them know. But it's more so like that we have enough space, because we do have a smaller space, So I basically have 1,000 square feet of space, and most of that is like a big table that I built, like, it's a big plywood table, like a birch ply table I made, like an 8x4, something like that. And then like the wheels and everything and some other space. It's somewhat limited though. And so because of that, I can't just have people stopping in. And then, like, if you just wanted to hand build out of nowhere and come to the table and not book a wheel, I still need you to book that space, because you're still taking up table space that students are going to be using and things like that. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's just like, I don't want my students feeling cramped while they're in there either. I like having members in there. Yeah.
And then anybody can go in there and see who's already booked the space or where it's free. Maybe they want to go.
We have like
when
an
nobody
online.
else is there.
Exactly. We have an online. So basically, the way I have it set up is like we have an online system where it's like you can see the calendar. I put in like when we have classes, so you know when certain spaces are taken up, and then you can book a side space during that time. Outside of that, though, you're welcome to come in whenever. I don't make you book outside of that unless it's like a workshop. When I teach my glaze workshops, I close the studio down because we're working with chemicals and then like we're wearing like either like respirators or N95s, and I don't want anybody coming in during that. But other than that, it's like people can come in anytime, except during classes. I do need you to like schedule, and that's like I had to be kind of just like I need you to do this. There was like you have to talk to a few people or something like that. Like you just got to make sure to schedule. I can't just have you come in, and you have to work in this area.
It's mainly
stuff like
just
that.
when classes are going on that you're limited.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I was thinking you meant just in the open time as well.
No, I'm still pretty chill and open about that.
Okay, gotcha.
And that has like to me, it's like I'm very much with like I'll think about any hard issues that might come up. I could make a rule, but to me, it's like that's where that micromanaging comes in. Of if it's not an issue, it's not really an issue, and if it is an issue, then we'll deal with it and talk about it. But that's where I think like if I were to think about all these possible issues to happen, I'm gonna have all these possible solutions, and then everybody's gonna feel like microman. That's when all those signs come up, right? You know what I mean?
And they're gonna be like, "Oh, I forgot.
People.
What do we do in this situation?" Like I remember he said something
exactly.
It's in some paper somewhere.
Yeah, and also too, like some people like refunds, like dropping out of a class, like day of, or getting people to fill in spots and things like that. Like having more like stuff really synced in, like this is how much you're gonna get back if you drop out of a class, like this much before a class, or this much, just so people have a better understanding. And nobody's been upset by that. Like I've really been very generous with like refunds and making sure spots get filled and things like that. But, some stuff like that as well. Like, okay, what is the actual, like, okay, if you leave like the day before and I have to really, hunt to get somebody to come take the class, or you leave the day of, like, how much can I really give back to you that's fair to the studio? Cause I'm like, as much as I'd be like, here, just have your money back. I can't necessarily just do that because that's just not fair to the studio because you booked that space and you're costing me that money during that time too. So, yeah.
Becca, was that similar to what you were kind of thinking about boundaries, or was it more just something different?
Kind of, but also I think that like I'm thinking like more in the future. Like I think every studio owner has that issue, that exact issue of like.
That's good to know. That's comforting.
Oh, I was literally talking to somebody today who's having an issue like this. So, and they have a totally different situation, but like somebody's coming in before they're even allowed to come in, and they just have a really shitty home life and they don't want to be at home, and they're staying way past their welcome essentially, and they're like, they're a really nice human being and we don't know what to do. So like everybody has that issue.
Mm-hmm.
And but I think that on top of that, like having going kind of like back to the fact that pretty much everybody becomes your friend. Like you need to make sure that you're scheduling days off, like very specific days off. You need to make sure that like if you're spent, you need to say no, because a lot of the times, when you're about to leave and somebody else is about to leave and they're maybe like working on stuff, they're like, hey, do you want to go grab a bite to eat? And it can become like every single night. You know?
Yeah, you got to take care of you. Yeah.
Yeah, and you get completely emotionally spent. And they're like, they don't realize that you're doing this every single day, and that like it wears on you after a while, And so that's another thing.
And it sounds like scheduling time with your partner as well to be intentional about setting aside time for them. Yeah. And
she would totally give me so much shit if I didn't make enough time for her. So
well, that's good. Yeah. That's good.
Which is helpful. It's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, to have a strong partner that's like, no, I need time too is good. Yeah, and I think that's mostly it. Like you really have to like figure out the boundaries of like being too nice, essentially.
Yeah.
So and like another thing that I found for me was Open Studio. Everybody would abuse Open Studio by like asking me so many questions, and by the end of it, I'm basically teaching a fucking class. And
yeah.
And like being like, you know what? we're not in a class right now. I will give you some resources so you can figure it out on your own.
Oh,
you know?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of something that I had to learn too.
Yeah.
Just to be like, or
It's
just
hard.
to literally remove myself from the space.
Yeah, it's hard to just be like, oh, well, I'm focused on loading this kiln. And for me, like, I like to do tasks where I'm very focused on it, and I'm like, it seems like my ears are open because I'm doing this thing that's kind of like thoughtless, and I know what I'm doing. But it's also like, it's kind of my time to relax and just zone into doing the thing I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want to have to put headphones on and just be listening to stuff, but because then you're closed off. But also, some people just don't respect the, hey, I'm busy and I'm doing my own thing here.
I found that headphones have been my personal savior. Like, especially
I like
these
the
big
headphone
ass
idea,
yeah, especially these big ass ones that are like, you can't mistake them for being headphones. Like, I was just, like I said, I was just talking about this, like, with multiple different people, and just saying, like, hey, I need to get this shit done now, and I so want to help you, and I so want to, like, be there for you, but I can't. And the minute I put these headphones on, I'm out. Like, I'm mentally not here. Like, I might as well be gone. Like, you could put some fucking notes on the side that says, if I have these on, don't talk to me. Like, you know.
And
I appreciate you saying that too, yeah. Because I think that, I definitely like have to focus, because part of it, and going back to the unreasonable hospitality thing, something big with the studios, I always tell people, like, if I am there, you can ask me questions while I'm in. Like, that's kind of part of the thing that I try to do. But there are definitely times when I need to be like doing my thing. And so you have to figure out, I think people will like do respect though if you say, hey, I can help you out in a minute, or like, I can't help you out now, but I can show you later. Also, I'm lucky in the back of the studio, it's like kind of the front face of the studio, and then there's like a back area that's got this garage that I've converted into my workshop. And so it's nice if I need to get away too, I have like at least a space to get away to, which I'm really appreciative of. Where it's like, I can just go hang out with my glaze and, go talk to my glaze and something like that. But,
I used to have a space that I literally, like, it was 6 feet by 20 feet, I think. And I literally just faced the wall. And I would and I'd put my headphones on, and if anybody walked in there, I didn't even know they were there. And that was it.
Because you got to be allowed to do your thing in your space too, And I think too, it's like, I'm lucky enough. Like, I think that people do, like, every day if I'm in there, people ask me questions, and I like that. I think that's something that I really value in the space, is like showing people. I think something when I first started making is like, I really enjoyed teaching people, but sometimes I would maybe talk to people too much and like tell them things, and they are doing their thing too, So kind of on the flip side, I feel like I've been that person before, whether like trying to give them a tip or just like talking when you don't need to. And I think that that's like, I've learned as I've gotten older how to kind of bring that in. And so now I've kind of learned more too of like, how can I, I wait for people to approach me now. If I overhear a conversation or something like that, even if I think I have something to say, I'm going to let them come to me and say something if they want to too. And to me, that's kind of limited, like planting myself into conversations, and it actually keeps me out of more conversations too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's just some social, what works for you socially as well. And what do you enjoy, and how do you want to be available, but not be burdened. Right. That's always, I really appreciate hearing you. I like that headphone thing. I might actually, so I use like some janky earbuds, that I think I got at like 7-Eleven or something like that. Right. Little ones. But I'm kind of thinking, you got these new Bose, all this stuff. I'm like, maybe I should get myself a nice little pair of studio headphones, because well, it's going to be comfy. It'll be comfy on my head. And then maybe it's like, good little sign too. And you look pretty cool too. So it's kind of like a win-win-win,
Yeah. Also, I was going to say one more thing that was kind of off the topic, but also in the topic. Fuck, what was I going to say?
You've had some brain farts tonight, Becca.
Dude.
You've had some good ones too, though. Good questions. Y'all are like awesome. No, seriously, great. Really, really appreciate hearing what y'all have to say and what you've been asking too.
Oh, I remember. Okay, I think a really important thing, and a part of the reason why I asked you if there was like a ceiling or a like a roof or whatever.
Yeah.
another thing that I would say to keep in mind and just to be aware of is that at some point within this journey that you're doing, you're going to need to, and it kind of comes back to like what Ryan said of like, what's your favorite thing? You need to make priorities of what you're doing, and you need to be intentional about what the goal is. And like that's what I fucked up on, where I was just like chasing money, you know? And that was never really the goal. It just like happened. And like I should have stopped doing one of the things that I was doing. I should have stopped teaching classes. I should have stopped, but I was doing all of it, and I spread myself way too thin. So make sure you're not spreading yourself thin in the future, because if you have a lot of plans, then that can definitely like creep in without you realizing.
Yeah.
That's
I really appreciate that too, because I think that like that burnout's something that I was working in the restaurant industry for a while before when I was younger, and that I learned a lot about burnout from being in that. It was pretty rough a lot of the time, and so I think going into this too, I really like what you say. My partner has been huge. She's always been like, Noah, like no, you're not going anywhere today. Like I don't really ever go in on Sundays. It's usually my day off, things like that. But also I think learning to like give up a little bit to other people. So like, early on, I'm like, I need to hire some people because I could do this all on my own, but I would just be so burnt. I'd be so done, so, hiring other folks has been a big part of that too. Getting those residents in as well. I was sick like a month and a half ago, something like that. And I had these people here and they're actually able to cover for me and get my back. And it was like, I don't know, that kind of breakthrough moment of, oh, like if something goes wrong, it's okay. Like if I can't make it, the entire world isn't just going to explode. But I think too is like things get bigger and bigger. I have to always keep that in mind as well. That's why I appreciate you saying that too, because I'm going to have these other ventures that are going on, and like I'm still always going to be caring about the studio. But if I'm putting in like all the effort I'm putting into the studio right now, in the future I'm not going to, or into my other thing, like that can only go so far, right? So you
are only one human, and
and if you can only physically handle so much, and like the strategy of the business and where it's going is going to take a big chunk, and there's not direct answers there. It's not as easy as like there's a bunch of pots that need to go in this kiln. It's a very linear this needs to be done, it's obvious. That takes up time. You can spend your time and effort doing 10 small things, or you can take a little more time to like focus on strategic, where only you can make that decision because it's your business at the end of the day. So exactly. and where you want it to go. So those things are going to take a lot of time, as well as talking with a lot of people and getting insights from what do the people want that are there, what does the community want. I'm sure you'll be asked, hey, do you do date nights? And then you're like, okay, well now we got to accommodate one-off 2-hour classes to a group of 10 people on Friday nights, and who's going to do them? Do I have space for it? Where's all the pots going to go? Like, I can foresee that coming up, and you got to handle memberships, you got to handle classes, you got to handle workshops, you got to handle like fancy workshops, date nights, and I can just see it getting really bloated, and it spreads you really thin. You know?
And I think you nailed it right on the head. And I think like I see like running the business, and a lot of it is managing people, right? Managing people, managing the happenings, managing a lot of stuff. And I've been lucky. I've had a lot of help. Like my partners help me with social media a lot of the times. And then but I'm still doing all the back end. I'm doing the bookkeeping, I'm doing everything I kind of need to be doing. Get a fucking
bookkeeper.
Well, it's not too bad.
Get a bookkeeper.
No. I got my QuickBooks set up. I'm good to go. One of my investors and a good friend of mine is like a financial advisor, and he's got me all hooked up. So I got some at least good knowledge. If it ever gets too much though, oh no, you best believe I'm outsourcing that too. But it's like I think Ryan really hit it on the head with like all these things add up, right? And you have to figure out how to manage them. And right now, like I'm teaching 3 classes, but starting February, I'm only going to be teaching 2 classes, and then my hope in the future is maybe I'm teaching 1 class. I love teaching and that brings me a lot of joy, but if I do need to step back from that too and just be running the business, maybe that's what I need to be doing as well. Right. And so I appreciate hearing you say that too, because it's like, it does just add on infinitely. Right. And so you kind of just have to figure out as you go. And maybe you do start to encroach on that burnout line and you have to be like, whoa, okay. Maybe you give yourself a timeline and say, I'm going to pull it back after this time and somehow allocate that stuff to somebody else. And I'm a really big advocate for hiring other people. I really love having workers and paying them well. And so that's been a big part of my business and like my philosophy in doing this. And so I'm not averse to hiring other people because all it does is make my life better. It makes my life more like easier, right? Okay, maybe I don't make as much money for the business because somebody else is making money, but that's a win-win for me at the end of the day too. So,
well, I mean, you're all about community, so it would make sense that you want to pay people,
Yeah.
Like that is literally what our economy is supposed to fucking do.
Yeah,
you're paying them, and then hopefully they're getting more job satisfaction as well as they're doing something that they want to be doing, so that they don't have to work that side job that they don't like, and then they spend their free time in the studio doing things, but they would really love to make enough at the studio or make a little extra so that it's more comfortable for them.
Yeah. And so all my teachers are all professionals in the area. So they're all like professional makers that have been teaching. And then they also get full access to the studio. So I let them make whatever they want and I run through their stuff and they can do, so it's like trying to just, at the end of the day, I wish I could hire them as full-time employees and give them something, whatever to do and like really give them some of that, substance to do their thing as well, to be makers and be teachers. But, right now it's like I can only hire people for a class or two per session, right? But that's even sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's enough, right?
Yeah.
That okay, I'm making an extra, $400 a week or something like that, or whatever, right? Doing a class, cool. Now that means that maybe I'm not worrying as much about, taking some other job or doing this other thing, or worrying this much about some other place that I don't enjoy as much and isn't paying me as well. And now I can focus more on my art. And I've seen even in these last 3 or 4 months, like the people that I've been employing have really been finding their own voice and really growing as makers and really like doing some amazing stuff. And it's like outside of me, right? And that's what I really appreciate is like they're finding themselves outside of like Heirloom and outside of like what I'm doing in my business. They're also creating their own personal, brands and their own personal voices and their work that is like I'm maybe helping them just have more room to do that. And that kind of goes with that culture creation and that community creation as well as like I want to see some nice pots and like if I can like pay somebody well, and at the end of the day, they end up making better pots at the end of the day, that's pretty cool to me too.
Yeah.
So,
I have a question that you don't have to answer, but I think that most people right at this moment are wondering. And I want to say this beforehand. I also think this is a really, like you've talked about paying people well. And I know that you have the correct or better than correct answer for this. So it kind of like, how much are you paying your teachers? I want to know how much you're paying your teachers.
I'm always an open book. I pay my teachers $40 an hour for the classes.
Oh, fucking K. Yes.
And then they get full access to the studio and everything too. And it's usually session's 3 hours and I pay them 4 hours for a session. So yeah.
And that's all 1099, I would suspect. So it's
no, they're all employees as well. So they're all employees as well. I've all hired them as employees too in my business. So I'm paying employer taxes. If I'm asking somebody to be there, I have a little gripe with that in the industry where people tend to be hired as contractors when I feel like you are basically doing employee work. I was an employee for a while too at some other places, and I have certain gripes with how things have been done. So so they're my employees. So they're employees. They're protected and they have employee rights and stuff like that. And then I pay them the 40 an hour. And then if they come in and teach a class or teach a workshop or cover for me, same thing. And then they also get full access to the studio. So I'm usually giving them anything they need: materials, clay, free firings, all that stuff too. So
nice. Well, thank you.
I'm always really trying to be transparent because I think we need good people being paid well. I mean, there's a lot of money in this industry, and people should be getting what they're valued. They shouldn't be, too taken advantage of when it comes to that. Because I think being a teacher is a very valuable skill, and it's worth money. People are paying money for it, and they should get what they're worth out of that. So.
Yeah, so many of my friends and other people that I've talked to, I wanted to ask that question because I know that there's somebody listening to this that is getting paid $15 an hour or $20 an hour to teach a class. And you're worth more than that if you are actually a solid teacher. If you're not a solid teacher, then you might be worth $15. But
I'm
but
not hiring somebody that's not a solid teacher though either.
Right,
I guess
but
is what I should
like
be saying as well. You know.
yeah, like you should be being paid at least $35 to $40 an hour. It does not matter where you are, because classes are basically the same price wherever you are. So
And they can do the math.
And you're probably taking on
The
more students too.
teachers can do the math to figure out.
yeah,
They can say, how much are you charging for the class? How many people do you have? Okay, how much money is that? How much am I getting of that cut? How much work am I putting in? Like, they know the math. Like, they can figure it.
Yeah. It comes out to about, I try to pay, it's a little less than like 50% of the cost of the class.
Yeah.
That's what goes to my teacher's pockets. Which, you know, I still need to make money for the studio. And so I think that's fair enough, you know? Maybe one day more but we'll see, you know? So, yeah.
It's more than fair.
You know, I'd love, you know, maybe one of these days if I could ever somehow figure out, we're making more money and have some more. The reason I'd like to grow the business too is, you know, if I could have somebody working maybe more full time, get some benefits going and stuff like that too. You know, healthcare is a big issue in this industry as well. Like I'm lucky enough that either through the state or through my partner over time, I've been able to get health insurance, but like it's hard to get health insurance as a potter. And that's like, I mean, living without health insurance is terrifying in the country, right? So, you know, making that more accessible to people maybe in the future and some stuff like that. That's a whole other rabbit hole to go down. But, you know, that's kind of a take on that as well. So, yeah.
For shizzle. Okay, well, it is.
There was something I was thinking about the bookend that I wanted to ask.
Oh, good, because it's midnight.
Okay, yeah.
It's late for y'all.
I was also, so I tend to, if I start picking up something and doing something new and trying it out because I got requested for it, I'll like keep going until I'm okay, I like it's not sustainable. Like I need to like let go of this thing. So I was gonna suggest like if you try, like feel free to like do things as trials as well. Like do it for a short period of time, see how it is, assess it, kind of retrospect on it, talk with the people that did it, or talk with your teacher. Like, did this work? Did this seem to do what we wanted? Like, because I tend to just keep going on something for a long time without just killing it when I should have killed it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I got to take on this thing because I said I was going to do it. And I just had to stick with it. But like, it's kind of my own ego of like, I don't want to have to admit that I should stop doing that.
Yeah.
You don't want to see like a quote unquote failure. And it's not really like a failure. It's like, you know, it's more like a trial and an error, right? But like, so we did some workshops last time and we pitched a couple and I thought they were all awesome workshops, different things we were doing, but one of them did well. And then my glaze workshops tend to sell out and people really like those, but there was like one or two that like maybe one person signed up for and we couldn't run them. And so it's like, at this point, do I try to just repeat those or do I say, okay, I'm just not going to do those workshops right now. And maybe I'm going to try something new. So what I'm doing now is like, I'm trying the sculpture 8-week class instead of doing workshops for right now, stuff like that, you know? And it's like, but I appreciate you saying that, like, it's okay to let go. You can let it be. Right.
Cause it's hard. It's hard. You know, if it's like, if you get 4 people to sign up for the sculpture workshop, like maybe you have that tight knit group and then, you know, do you run it again? And do you hope that you get more, or is it just the same group? And then like, okay, maybe that doesn't mean it needs to be a workshop, but maybe it's like short, intensive things that group can kind of form naturally and organically on their own.
I like,
versus
and when you care a lot about it too, it's hard
workshop.
to kill it off. Yeah, if it's like something that's like, oh, this is like, oh, I have this great idea, you know, I'm gonna do this, you know, we're gonna, I don't know, some random workshop, and nobody signs up, right? But you care so much about it, I'm gonna do it next time. That's just wasted space, right? At that point, or you know, wasted money or whatever.
And your energy is spent on something that maybe you really want to have happen, and it's something that you have this picture of what it's going to be, but maybe it's just not the time for it, or maybe the audience isn't there for it right now. But it can be.
It's a lot like pots, right? It's a lot like pots, Whether your pots work out or they not work out, you know, you got some great idea for some cool design, and it just totally will not work sometimes, and that's fine, you know. Yeah, I appreciate that though. Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah. All right, Becca, any last words? I think we need to wrap up here. This went way longer than I expected. I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. This is my blast. I seriously, sorry, Ryan asked Becca, so I'll let Becca go. But I'll say
I have nothing. The only other thing is that you should read the book, The E-Myth too. E-Myth and Profit First.
E-Myth. Okay.
Those two books.
The E-Myth is really small from what I remember. It's a really
it's short.
Real thin book.
Oh, you're back! Yay!
I am. I didn't want it to cut out. I would have felt so bad. I was like, what the heck, So we'll see. Maybe we'll go. But thank you both so much. Honestly, this has been such a great conversation, and you give me some really great tips too. And it's really nice to chat with y'all too. I've been a fan for a while, so it's nice to just get to meet both of you and just have a nice conversation. And I really appreciate what y'all are doing too for the ceramic community. I think that when I was really learning and trying to see what it would be like to even possibly do something in this world as a living and really try to make it, I felt like your voices were very encouraging. And it's also you're not, you're chill and you're just doing your thing and you're having a conversation. And I think that we don't get to see that enough of the real side of all the ceramics. And I appreciate how honest both of you are. And it definitely I think only gave me a better idea about the realities of living as a potter. It's not some glamorous, I mean, at times it can be awesome, but it's hard too. It's a lot of hard work, it's a lot of realities you have to deal with. And having both of you just to learn from and stuff too has been really influential and kind of shaping my thoughts around the community and stuff too. So I really appreciate you both a lot. And I'm really happy you're doing what you're doing too. So
thanks, Noah. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
We both appreciate it. Yeah, if anything, the podcast is not just us, but talking to so many people. There's different studio sizes and different places you're at, and there's just so many different formulas for how it can work for you and just what you're passionate about, what you can find success in, as well as somebody else can find success in something completely different.
Exactly.
There's just so much potential.
You got to do what you feel is right. And, I'm really fortunate and lucky that I've had these opportunities and I've worked my ass off too, to get these done. But, I think that especially in the world of ceramics and the world of art, you just got to kind of do what you think is right and keep following through with it and be pretty honest with yourself about stuff too. And cool stuff will happen. It's just keep going and life will work out in ways and it's cool. Yeah.
All right. Where can people find you on the interwebs?
Yeah, so you can find the studio at Heirloom Ceramic Studio, no S after ceramics, so Heirloom Ceramic Studio on Instagram, and then you can find me at NWS_ceramics for my personal stuff, but definitely go give us a follow at Heirloom Ceramic Studio. We're always kind of posting about some fun stuff going on, and we have our workshops opening up if you're in the Portland area this Friday at 10 a.m. We have a couple beginner and some intermediate classes going live too, so if you want to come take a class with me or one of the awesome instructors there too, you should definitely check that out.
Sweet.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right. No,
thank
you so much. Thanks everybody for listening.
Oh, before we leave, I'm gonna cut it before that. Oh yeah, bye. Say bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Okay.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to another episode of Wheel Talk. This podcast is made possible through the contributions of all of our listeners who always ask us great questions, leave us reviews, and contact with us through social media. Thanks to all the fellow makers as well who take time to be interviewed and share about their lives and businesses.
And thank you to Ashley from Boldover Ceramics and Lindy from Lindy Garner Ceramics for their assistance on the Wheel Talk podcast Instagram. You are invaluable. Thank you to everybody.